It's haunting Valentine delights.
The name's Slappy.
He's looking for the perfect date. So take the ride.
It's my wedding day, and I want my bride.
Watch Bride of the Living Dummy and all new Ultimate Goosebumps next Saturday morning at 9 when Slappy hosts Goosebumps Creep Connection on Fox Kids.
Another Halloween, another Goosebumps Annual. We have put the original Goosebumps behind us, and now find ourselves in the land of Goosebumps Series 2000. A reboot of sorts. A fresh start to maybe inject some new ideas into the franchise, adjust the tone, come up with original monsters, and, hold up, I just got a memo here. Okay, it seems 2 books into the series, and we're already bringing back Slappy. Well, fine. Okay, in fairness, out of the 25 books in Goosebumps Series 2000, only 4 are continuations of original Goosebumps stories. There was a second Horrorland book called Return to Horrorland, a second Ghost Camp book called Return to Ghost Camp? No, guys, you did Return already, by Atthis, and 2 new Living Dummy books. I can't speak to what was going on behind the scenes on this matter, but this does seem to be around the point Slappy started to pivot into becoming the main character of the Goosebumps franchise. Curly, the Mohawk skeleton, wouldn't survive the transition. While you could probably still find some leftover Curly merch in stores when the revised series began in 1998, his cool dude attitude never shared a space with the 2000 branding, and we wouldn't see him again until the 2010s when millennial nostalgia took over the world. Goosebumps Series 2000 doesn't have a mascot character per se. It didn't last long enough to get the merchandise train up to speed, but I would argue that this was the time that Slappy started to become the face of the franchise. Not to get too ahead of ourselves, but Bride of the Living Dummy is notable for finally giving Slappy a backstory, a bit of mythology for the longtime readers to chew on. And the next Slappy book after this disregards the Living Dummy title altogether. Slappy's nightmare knows you already know who Slappy is, already recognize the name. You couldn't do a Count Nightwing's nightmare or a Masked Mutant's nightmare now, could you? So with a renewed emphasis on the dummy, you'd hope that Slappy the character would expand into something more interesting. Because, for me, Slappy was pretty one-note and not very threatening in his original Goosebumps trilogy. Of course, he was only a cameo in the first Night of the Living Dummy, but books 2 and 3 failed to justify him as a threat. All he really can do, is play pranks and damage property, and try to get someone else blamed for it. He's very low stakes, very defeatable, and surprisingly uncharismatic in these original books. Nothing here to indicate he would one day have a whole series named after him, be the main antagonist in 2 whole Goosebumps movies, plus whatever he's doing in that Disney Plus Goosebumps show. I don't know, I haven't watched it yet. But hey, I'm open to seeing things improve, so let's cut the chit-chat and dive into Goosebumps Series 2000, number 2, Bride of the Living Dummy. Our main character this go-around is 12-year-old Jillian Zinman, and she has a dream, to become a birthday party clown. Now I know what you're thinking, ha ha, what kid wants to be a clown? Clowns are scary, etc., etc. And I will not have it! Clowning is an ancient, noble profession that ties into many art forms, and we will not be downplaying them here, no siree Bob. You know what birthday clowns were doing in the 1990s? Inventing crumping! Seriously, look up Tommy the Clown, it's pretty interesting stuff. Point is, I've seen a lot of reviews that slag on Jillian for wanting to be a clown for an easy joke, but I think it's a reasonable thing for a child to be interested in, so it doesn't bother me none. Jillian barely has any time to think about clowning, though, because her 6-year-old twin sisters, Katie and Amanda, are driving her up the wall. The twins have this doll, Mary Ellen. She's like one of those real-looking American Girl things. And the girls treat this doll like it's alive, that Mary Ellen talks to them and plays with them. And oh yeah, Mary Ellen hates Jillian. She hates Jillian's attitude, she hates Jillian's pet lizard Petey, and she hates Jillian's hair. The book opens with the twins trying to give their sister a middle-of-the-night haircut. A sharp click pulled me from my dream. I woke up with a startled gasp and squinted into the darkness of my room. I heard another metallic click, and then a sharp scraping sound. A silvery blade flashed in the darkness. Holy crap! Creepy twins with a creepy doll wielding scissors while you sleep? That is a proper terrifying way to open your book. It should also be a breaking point for Jillian. Like, the twins should be in so much trouble for this. However, Jillian never brings it up, and you get the impression that her parents wouldn't respond to it in the best way anyway. The conflict between Jillian and the twins has been going on for a while, so Mom is just checked out, and Dad hides away in his little woodworking shop in the basement. One day, Jillian is tasked with taking the twins to the theater to see a local ventriloquist, one Jimmy O. James. Wait, that means his name is James O. James. Yeah, and this is my brother, Mario. The twins bring along Mary Ellen, and Jillian brings along her best friend and fellow clown hopeful, Harrison. O. James comes out on stage, and that ventriloquist dummy seems a bit familiar.
Here's a riddle for you, Jimmy,
Slappy growled. His voice came out gruff and hoarse.
What's the difference between a skunk and your breath?
I don't know, Jimmy stammered.
I don't know either,
Slappy barked. Slappy goes into a whole insult comic spiel, insulting a rather nervous-looking O. James and insulting the audience, including the twins and Mary Ellen, which really upsets them. When the show ends, the twins run off to the back of the theater to try and confront the ventriloquist, and Jillian gives chase. Jillian ends up stumbling on O. James's dressing room, where he seems like he's having an argument with the dummy. But that's impossible. The dummy's not really alive, right? Then Slappy gives Double James a bloody nose, and wow, we are really upping the physical violence this time around. Jillian finds the twins and they all go home, but Harrison has a surprise. While the sisters were out getting ice cream, he found Slappy the dummy in a dumpster outside the theater. There's no indication that he's still alive, and while Jillian does find the little card with the magic words that bring dummies to life, she, very importantly, does not say all of the words. Time passes, and Jillian and Harrison have their first gig as birthday clowns coming up. To spruce up their act, they go to the local magic shop, one of those things I'm sure exist in real life, but I've only ever seen in fiction. On the way in, they pass Jimmy O. James and are all like, "Hey, dude, we found Slappy, is that okay?" And Double James runs away, screaming that they need to get rid of the dummy. The kids shrug and go about their business, buying props for the clown show, including a deck of cards that squirts water at you, and a prop pie. "This could be good," I said. "You fill it up with whipped cream. It looks like a pie, but when someone bends down close to it, you squeeze this pump and it squirts the whipped cream in his face." Harrison laughed. "We'll do an all-squirting act." No, you can't say that! Don't say that! Never say that again! Oh my god, I'm gonna get demonetized! What's wrong with you? Okay, so Jillian and Harrison go to the birthday party gig for a bunch of 4-year-olds, and the two clowns start to bomb. And not because they've been sabotaged. I mean, they have been sabotaged, but we haven't gotten to that part yet. They're just not very good. Too inexperienced to get the timing right. They haven't really adjusted their act for little toddlers. Harrison brought a real kitchen knife for a "I'll cut the deck" joke, which freaks out the parents. And it does not help that their material was written by jovial Bob Stine. So this birthday clown thing was going to fail no matter what. But then they discover the sabotage. The squirting cards have been drained of water, and someone took out the cream in the squirting pie, Jesus Christ, and replaced it with shaving cream, which ends up getting into some of the kids' eyes. The parents are upset, the kids are upset, the clowns are upset, and nobody did any crumping. Meanwhile, the conflict between Jillian and the twins continued to escalate. A fight at the dinner table sees Jillian dumping Mary Ellen's face in a plate of macaroni and cheese because the doll sits at the table and Mom always serves a plate for the toy. Now that's just food waste. As revenge, Katie and Amanda make Jillian believe Slappy is talking and give her a fright. Then, Petey the lizard is found inside Slappy's mouth. Pet endangerment finally gets the parents' attention, and the twins have Mary Ellen taken away from them. "Jillian, can we tell you something?" Katie pleaded in a tiny voice. "It won't take long," Amanda said. "No, I've had enough of your tricks for one day," I snapped. "Go to bed, now." "Please?" Amanda called. "Please?" Katie echoed. Too bad I didn't listen to them. While their clown act was a failure, Harrison suggests they pivot to a dual ventriloquist act. After all, they already have one dummy, but Jillian has been feeling very uneasy about Slappy these days. Something ain't right about that puppet. Now, the two kids don't know the first thing about ventriloquism, so they do the natural thing and head over to Jimmy O. James's house unannounced. The place is abandoned, a mess with half-constructed dummies sprawled about. While investigating the place, they stumble onto one of Double James's diaries and discover that he did a lot of research into Slappy's origins. This is the story as it was told to me. The puppet maker was a sorcerer who used his puppet creations for evil. His puppets and toys made people sick with strange illnesses. He built dolls that injured their owners, toys that stole precious belongings while their owners slept. The sorcerer loved spreading misery and evil through innocent-looking toys. The dummy named Slappy is the sorcerer's most evil invention. He stole a coffin for its wood. He carved the dummy from the coffin wood. And then the sorcerer sent his own evil into the dummy. The sorcerer's evil spirit lives inside Slappy, ready to be awakened by reading of the evil words of magic the sorcerer wrote. Okay, now we're talking. It's not exactly poetry, but Slappy being given an origin story this precise is very welcome. I guess he's an evil sorcerer possessing the doll, and he just gets off on being evil. I mean, we all need our hobbies. And the detail of Slappy being made of coffin wood is metal as hell. I love it. It does raise a few questions. I can accept that the sorcerer's magic brings other unrelated dummies to life, but if Slappy is the central dummy in all of this, why did Mr. Wood have the card with the magic words in the first Night of the Living Dummy? The card seems otherwise drawn to Slappy specifically. But we'll have plenty of time to get twisted up in backstory some other day. I looked ahead, and Slappy is a soup of retcons. Double James's diary thoroughly unnerves Jillian, and when she comes home, she finds Slappy sitting on her vanity, the words, "Where is my bride?" written on the mirror. Jillian is officially done with Slappy and doesn't want to use him for the ventriloquist act. Harrison agrees to find a replacement dummy, and they'll use Mary Ellen as their second character. Another birthday party rolls around, this time hosted at Jillian's house. The kids gathering in the basement while all of the parents are next door, probably drinking mimosas and planning swinger parties. Remember, part of this basement is taken up by Dad's workshop, meaning we have nearly 20 unsupervised children hanging around power tools and table saws. It's time for the act, but when Jillian opens the box containing the alternate dummy, she finds Slappy there instead. The kids are impatient, so Jillian gives in and starts doing the act as Slappy, with Harrison performing Mary Ellen. It doesn't take too long before a now-alive Slappy makes his presence known, and boy howdy does he. Before I could do anything, the dummy tilted back his head. He opened his jaws wide. I heard a gurgling sound from deep inside Slappy's stomach, and then I cried out as the gurgling grew to a roar, and a thick green liquid poured out of Slappy's open mouth. It gushed out like water from a fire hose. Thick green gunk, thick as pea soup. Slappy turned his head and sprayed the green goo over the kids. Oh, Slappy, let me guess, Taco Bell for lunch? I cracked myself up. After spraying the kids down exorcist style, Slappy grabs a boy and threatens to hurt him if he doesn't have his bride. At first, Jillian thinks Slappy means Mary Ellen, but Slappy grabs her by the wrist and says, "Jillian will be his bride." Okay, one, where is this bride thing even coming from? Slappy was all about making kids his slaves, which was weird enough on its own, but now he wants to get married? Why? To what end? Two, maybe we shouldn't ever be doing any kind of child bride plot in Goosebumps, but especially in the book, where we learn that Slappy is actually an ancient adult sorcerer. Things get mighty uncomfortable with how physical Slappy gets with Jillian, including headbutting her and calling it a love tap. Stine, what the hell? There's also the matter of who brought Slappy to life. Remember, Jillian didn't fully say the magic words, which means someone else had to have. I turned to Harrison. I opened my mouth to tell him to run up the stairs to bring the parents from next door. But before I could say a word, a voice rang out through the basement. A female voice. An angry voice. "Let go of that girl, Slappy," the voice cried. "She isn't your bride. I am." I turned to see who was screaming. Mary Ellen. Yep, Mary Ellen is alive. In fact, she's been alive since before the book even began. She's been manipulating the twins, telling them what to do, how to get back at their sister, and only recently have the two girls realized that Mary Ellen's intentions might not be pure. It was Mary Ellen that brought Slappy to life with intent to marry him, because I guess in the world of evil living doll things, marrying an evil sorcerer is probably the best you'd ever get. It's a decent twist, if not entirely telegraphed in the book's title and cover art. If you don't have that, you know something's up with that doll, but you might assume that Mary Ellen would play, something like the role of Dennis in Night of the Living Dummy 2, showing up in the book's final twist. Oh, the magic words made her alive too. Instead, Mary Ellen is the book's true villain, with Slappy suddenly finding himself as her side piece. Well, Slappy isn't pleased about that. Mary Ellen is an old uggo, and he already called dibs on this 12-year-old girl. Slappy didn't listen to all that Andrew Tate just to settle. Slappy and Mary Ellen get into a tussle that spills into the workshop, and when Slappy tries to run the doll through the table saw, he ends up getting sucked in too. Both living toys cut in half and rendered inert, presumably killed. The party ends, the kids go home, the parents are upset at the mess but have no idea who to blame. Everything gets cleaned up, and it seems like things are back to normal. But then Harrison starts reading Double James's diary again, and learns that Slappy never really dies. When his dummy body is destroyed, he possesses someone nearby. Jillian then opens her mouth and vomits green all over the room. The end. And that's Bride of the Living Dummy. First things first, is it a step in the right direction for the Living Dummy series? I'd confidently say yes. Learning Slappy's backstory here was critical. It really added some much-needed dimension to the character and gave him a little evil core to his being. He's still just being a jerk for its own sake, but at least there's something new under the hood to work with. This book also gets points for not repeating nearly as many story beats as the first 3 Living Dummy books. For most of the story, Mary Ellen is playing out the classic Living Dummy story in the background. The whole enslaving children and putting blame on them for breaking things plot happening to the twins, out of sight of Jillian and the reader, while Jillian and the reader project their own anxieties onto what turns out to be a very much not alive Slappy. It turns your expectations from the previous 3 books and uses them to misdirect you. So, huge points for that. However, while this is definitely an improvement, there is still a lot of work to be done. Despite his new backstory, Slappy is about as brutish and uncharismatic as ever. He's surprisingly violent, tossing kids around, giving Jimmy O. James a bloody nose, and his turn towards wanting a child bride just isn't welcome. I've said it before, but Slappy feels like he should be a sort of devil-on-your-shoulder character, a funny little guy who tempts you with something, then turns it around and gets you into deeper trouble. And Slappy should just be funnier. He's a dummy. Ventriloquist dummies are supposed to be little puppet stand-up comedians, but outside of some insult jokes, Slappy mostly just goes, screw you, kid, you're my slave. The pacing is a little slow, too. Most of these scenes don't flow into each other, you could shuffle them up and get basically the same story. The finale is wild, with its dummy puke hosing and living doll reveals and epic battles on top of a table saw, but actually getting to that point feels a bit, when are they going to get to the fireworks factory? So, for the sake of tradition, here's my rewrite, and I'm going to make some big changes here. First off, let's bring Jillian's interest in being an entertainer to the forefront. The Zinman family is a show business family. Dad does pyrotechnics for movies and keeps a lot of supplies in the basement. Mom is an overworked agent representing her kids. And the twins, Katie and Amanda, are aspiring child actors, a sort of Mary-Kate and Ashley Olsen thing going on. Small but memorable roles in a sitcom. The twins always have their doll Mary Ellen with them and treat her like she's alive. A little weird, but everyone brushes it off. Jillian wants to be a clown, a comedian, a less conventional type of entertainer that doesn't get the same support as her sisters get. And also, she's just not very good at it. Her mother's all, well, maybe you should just be the normal one in the family, which just frustrates Jillian more. The book opens with Jillian and Harrison bombing his birthday clowns. Some of the props seem to have been sabotaged, but they can't be sure. And then Jillian takes the twins to see Jimmy O. James because Jillian wants to see him, not because the twins do. It's Jillian who ends up finding Slappy in the dumpster, saying the magic words and bringing him to life. Now, Slappy doesn't proclaim Jillian to be his slave, and of course he super doesn't try to make her his bride. Instead, Slappy goes, "Hey kid, you could use a buddy. I've been around this entertainment block a few times. How about I give you a few pointers, write a few jokes for you, coach your act a little bit?" Jillian actually gets along with Slappy, and with his help, she and Harrison do another birthday party. And it goes so much better. Kids are laughing, parents are laughing, and Jillian's career as a birthday clown really starts to pick up. However, Slappy starts suggesting that maybe Katie and Amanda are getting in Jillian's way. That maybe Jillian could book more shows if Mom had more time for her. Slappy does something like swap the girls' shampoo for dye, turning their hair green, which will delay shooting that sitcom. Jillian is not happy that Slappy starts pulling pranks like this, especially after her mom starts to suspect her. But she can't get rid of Slappy because he's turning out to be the secret to her success. Jillian does an open mic night with Slappy and kills it, and some big-name comedian takes notice. Things are really looking up for Jillian's career. Now, in the original book, Harrison is just a warm body to move props around, so let's give him something to do. As Slappy takes over Jillian's life, Harrison gets concerned. His best friend is growing distant. He wasn't invited to that open mic, and she's spending all of this time with that creepy dummy. Harrison goes off on his own to talk to Jimmy O. James, finds the diary, discovers Slappy's origins, which will keep mostly the same, that Coffinwood thing is too good not to keep. But there's also this little extra detail, passing mention of the evil sorcerer belonging to a cult of evil magicians. Harrison tries to warn Jillian about it, but now Jillian has stars in her eyes. Slappy convinces her that the boy is just jealous, and she breaks off their friendship. Tension between Jillian and the twins boil over. There's some nasty pranks aimed at all parties, and Mom brings everyone in for a family meeting down in the basement. Mom realizes that show business is tearing the family apart, so she's taking the drastic move of retiring from being an agent. She's pulling the twins out of the sitcom, and she's moving the family out of California. The three kids start to panic and fight their mom over this when the door to the basement opens. Down walks Slappy in front of everyone, holding a hammer in a very threatening manner. And then, from out of the shadows, walks Mary Ellen, wielding a knife. "Well," Slappy says, "I think that's game over. By my count, 5 points to me, 4 points to you, Mary Ellen." Mary Ellen scoffs. "Hardly. I was here first. I had a head start." It turns out that A, Mary Ellen was alive this whole time and had been manipulating the twins to make them more famous so that she could enjoy a life of luxury. B, Mary Ellen, who has no backstory at all in the original book, was part of the same evil, put our souls into dolls cult as Slappy, and the two have known each other for centuries. C, when Slappy showed up, the two of them decided to play a game, trying to raise their chosen child's star while sabotaging the other. And finally, D, while playing this little game against each other, Slappy and Mary Ellen have fallen in love. Slappy proposes to Mary Ellen right there in front of the panicked family. Well, now that their game is over, Slappy and Mary Ellen want to end things with a bang. Literally. They force the family to bring a bunch of Dad's fireworks out into the backyard, then tie everyone up and set them on top of the pile. Slappy and Mary Ellen change into wedding attire and force the family to watch a mock wedding, Slappy holding the ignition switch for the pyrotechnics, set to go off when they kiss, ending the family in a blaze. However, they didn't account for Harrison, who sneaks into the backyard and unties Jillian. Jillian grabs a fireworks rocket, sneaks over to Slappy and Mary Ellen as they say their vows. Slappy hits the ignition button, but doesn't realize that Jillian has tied the rocket to their shoes. The rocket launches off into space, taking Slappy and Mary Ellen into the sky, and it explodes, seemingly destroying the two of them. The day is saved. Jillian and the twins get along better, and everyone packs up to leave California. Jillian and Harrison make up, but since the family is moving, this is still the end of their friendship. The book ends with the focus shifting to Harrison, who returns home and empties his backpack, revealing that he's collected the pieces of the blown-up Slappy, with intent to reconstruct him and become a famous comedian himself. What could go wrong? It could use some tweaking, but I think the rewrite takes the ingredients presented in the original book and actually makes a meal of them. Jillian wanting to be a birthday clown has more relevance, Harrison is a stronger character, Mary Ellen has stronger motivations and an actual origin, and Slappy is the silver-tongued schemer that I feel he should always have been, and that Goosebumps now tries to sell him as. The gross child bride stuff is gone, while also still paying off the title. As is, I wouldn't go so far as to call Bride of the Living Dummy a good book, but it is a step in the right direction for this mini-franchise within Goosebumps. It uses the tired formula of the previous trilogy to play with expectations, and it might catch you by surprise. You know, if you, didn't read the title or look at the cover. And I do love Slappy's origin story. Coffinwood is such a cool choice. I don't think the plot's very interesting. The scares feel pretty minimal, but I'll call it as I see it. This is the best Living Dummy book I've read so far. I give Bride of the Living Dummy a, by popular demand, the next year's Goosebumps Annual will be decided by viewer vote, so be ready for that, out of 10.